is live, and I'm your host, your neighbor, David Gronowski. So glad to be with you once again on FM and AM, live, as we celebrate news that's good. That's what we want to hear. We want to hear positive news on this program. That's what we're here for. There's a lot of blame games that can go around, tit for tat, scapegoating that you see in the media. But we are always dedicated to getting to the bottom of things, getting to the truth. And I saw this announcement today, and I wanted to get the person who did it on the program to explain it. And that is, we have Paul Martin, Senior Director for Policy and Political Affairs at Peace Action, coming on now with us to explain that it appears that Biden and Harris are going to end support for the Yemen war. So, Paul, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, David.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the program. And first, I just wanted to give people a little background. Tell us a little bit about your organization before we dive into today's news.
Sure. We were founded back in the day as the Committee for a Sane Nuclear Policy after the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and work on ridding the world of eliminating nuclear weapons. And then in the 60s, during the Vietnam War, we opposed that war. Now we continue to work to end wars if we can, get rid of nuclear weapons, reduce the Pentagon budget, and elect members of Congress who will do that.
Well, very good. Sounds like good ideals. So let's talk about today's press release you guys put out, that Biden Harris end support for Yemen war. NGOs demand end to all arms sales and increased humanitarian aid. So set the stage for us. What's the news here?
Sure. And for those who don't know, Yemen is the southernmost part of kind of the Arabian area, across the Red Sea from Somalia and just south of Saudi Arabia. It's the poorest country in that region. And it's been going through civil wars for a number of years, and then back in 2015, when Saudi Arabia was concerned that some of their factions were going to lose, they end up attacking, and have been attacking in various ways, Yemen since 2015. And they've been doing that with the support of the U.S. The U.S. has been providing arms sales, intelligence, targeting, logistical assistance, with Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, who have been conducting this war. And unfortunately, this war has caused one of the largest human-caused humanitarian disasters, with right around 20 or so million people who require some sort of humanitarian assistance. And this is a country of a population of 27 million. So nearly the whole country, that's about the size of the state of Texas, needs some sort of assistance, with multi-millions on the brink of famine. And this has been purposeful by the Saudi-led coalition, who have targeted hospitals and done blockades where food and et cetera cannot get in. And they have targeted funerals and weddings. It's just been, and the UN has, said there's been war crimes on all sides of what's going on there. But the U.S. has been providing support, and this did start under the Obama administration, but it increased under the Trump administration, where they increased sales to Saudi Arabia. And there was so much concern with Congress that Congress ended up passing, for the first time ever, war powers resolutions to try to stop the president from providing support to the country. War powers resolution was something that Peace Action worked on back in the day after the Vietnam War, when people decided that Congress needs to make sure that there was a say when we go to war. So it's great to hear that today's announcement that the Biden administration intends to stop all offensive support to the Saudi-led coalition. Now, we haven't seen the details, and they also said they're going to stop a couple of the arms sales that Trump has put together last year. We haven't seen the details, so we don't know all the details, but we certainly, this is going to be a big first step if we're going to stop aiding Saudi Arabia and UAE in this. and stop these arms sales so we can find some sort of a peace solution through the UN and to let humanitarian aid to go in. Because as you can imagine, with hospitals and stuff damaged, we've had issues. They had issues with cholera, the biggest cholera outbreak in modern history, and now with COVID, even worse. So it'll be a great humanitarian thing and bring people hopefully back from the brink of famine. There's a lot more to do, but this is a good first step, and it's good news to have on your show.
Yeah, it is. And I wanted to just expand the details of that a little bit as best as you know. What do you think is the impetus for the Biden administration to say they're going to withdraw support for that campaign? Is it a matter of things are pretty much wrapped up about what they wanted to accomplish when it was started with Obama? And why did it, why do we have this break? In other words, why is a lot of the same folks that were with the Obama administration or with the Biden administration, so why is there break from that policy? Is it just, again, a matter of, well, we've kind of done what we needed to do here? Or is it just a matter of, well, actually, that wasn't a good idea, it's time to stop?
Well, some of this will obviously be speculation on my part.
Yeah.
But some of the arms sales with support to Saudi Arabia probably started in exchange for Saudi Arabia's support or to get Saudi Arabia to allow the Iran nuclear deal to move forward, which was a great deal and a great agreement that the Obama administration put forward, which made the world safer. It put a huge amount of verification on Iran and helped put a tamp down on the possibility of Iran getting a nuclear weapon. Unfortunately, Trump threw that aside. But I think some of those agreements for that provided some arms sales and support to Saudi Arabia. But the Obama people then did not expect to see what kind of activities that Saudi Arabia would do over these last 5 or 6 years. Some of the arms sales specifically were providing something so-called precision-guided munitions. These are supposed to be, so-called kind of smart bombs. You can really guide them so that you don't target civilian targets. Well, it's been clear from human rights reports in the UN that Saudi and UAE actually was using those weapons to specifically target civilians. I think that those who worked on Obama certainly didn't see how bad Saudi Arabia and UAE would act. Then you also had the murder of Khashoggi, which you'll remember was a huge, huge media sensation since he was a former Washington Post reporter, and it was clear that he was murdered by Saudi Arabia. Add to that, international coalition of organizations around the world who have seen the problems with this humanitarian crisis and who have been organizing for 5 or 6 years now, put some significant amount of political pressure on various countries. So you've had countries who slowly started to stop selling arms to Saudi Arabia, and in this country, we're able to get votes to pass various pieces of legislation over the last 4 or 5 years to thwart the war. And that type of political pressure put pressure on the Biden campaign, in which he made a promise. He said he was going to end the war. The devil will be in the details, but I think that there are multiple reasons here why we hear this announcement. And a lot of it had to do with typical people picking up the phone and calling their member of Congress or getting out to a protest, speaking out. So there was a day of action actually a few weeks ago in which Peace Action participated, which there were 200 to 300 events all around the world calling for an end to this war. So it was good grassroots activism, as well as those who work in the humanitarian space pointing out the problems and the war crimes that were happening in Yemen.
Does this give us some real hope that perhaps the Biden administration is not going to re-escalate things in Syria as well, or do you not see that as an implication of this?
Yeah, I think that's unclear. It's only been a few weeks now that they've come in. With this announcement, also became announcements in which they said they were going to be very focused on diplomacy first. The Biden-Harris administration said that they're going to be doing a review of our troop posture across the world, like how many troops do we have and do we need them to be where they need to be. So I think they're going to be re-looking at everything, and that will include Syria as well. So it's unclear how it's going to affect and their actions. And again, these are statements. So I really want to see what the actions are and see what the details are. And I'm sure there'll be more that peace action and other groups are going to be pushing for, specifically to Yemen and to Syria. But specifically to Yemen, we want to make sure that one, they said they would stop offensive support. So that means that they will probably still continue drone strikes in Yemen against what they will claim could be violent extremists. And we have some issues with those type of drone strikes. And then additionally, we want to make sure we stop all arms sales, especially to Saudi Arabia, which has a horrific human rights record, not only in its own country, but how it's been treating Yemen. We should not be selling arms there. So and we want to make sure we increase our humanitarian aid, because we sort of, when you break it, you got to fix it. We help break it. So we need to kind of help fix Yemen and make sure we're providing aid there. So I think there's going to be a lot more to push for, but there's definitely steps in the right direction on Yemen, which I'm hoping that will still, and there was other good foreign policy stuff that we've done. Ended the Muslim ban that the Biden administration has done. End the Muslim ban. They just renewed the START treaty, which was a treaty to limit the number of nuclear weapons that both the U.S. and Russia can have deployed. And the U.S. and Russia, as you know, possess about 90 to 95% of the world's nuclear weapons. That was a great treaty. The Trump administration failed on renegotiating that, and the Biden administration has already got that done. So there's a bunch of good things that all paving the way to good stuff. So I am, as they say, cautiously optimistic, but there's going to be a long road to hoe. And one of the longest roads is the Pentagon budget. Right. The Pentagon budget sometimes drives a lot of this, because when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And to get that reduced is very difficult, because those war contractors have significant lobbying power, and they're very smart. They put one part in like every congressional district, so every member of Congress is kind of fighting over one little part, even though Pentagon spending is the worst job creator that you can imagine. So the Pentagon budget will be, I think, the longest road to hoe, but everything I see so far has been positive, and it's only been a few weeks in.
Well, very good. And Paul Martin, I want to have you on to, again, sometime to talk about Qatar. I've heard that Qatar has become a bigger player in D.C. Lobbying efforts, and how maybe that is shaping a turn against Saudi Arabia. I don't think we should be, having any foreign government, shape our foreign policy interests, but I wanted to get that perspective on Qatar from you as well. But this is great news, and let's see it pan out. Let's see more peace and more withdrawal of unnecessary wars continue. So thanks again, Paul Martin, for joining me. He's the Senior Director of Peace Action. You can visit their website, peaceaction.org. Glad you could join us.
Thanks again for having me, David.
All right, very good. We'll be back in just a moment, live on A Neighbor's Choice. David Gronowski here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals. Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER. Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
Do you despise lawyers? That may be the case until you need one. If you've been in an auto accident and need legal advice, go to the local attorneys that have served Tampa Bay families for over 28 years. Catania and Catania. They are family owned. They understand your legal situation. When you need legal representation, Catania and Catania will care for your case from the beginning to the end of representation. You won't need to worry. Catania and Catania will represent you through the entire process. Auto or motorcycle accidents are too frequent in Florida. Catania and Catania. They don't get paid if you don't get paid. Referrals on request. Contact Catania and Catania. Putting families first. Offices, Tampa. An attorney spokesperson.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gronowski. So looking at politics again, and again, we just had a segment in where politics has a good story for stopping doing what politicians do, which is to meddle in people's affairs, both here and at home and abroad. And that includes the country of Yemen, where they have unleashed a lot of nasty carnage, starting with Obama. Trump continued it, and it looks like there's some signal from the Biden administration they're going to stop it. So maybe this is a sign that they've learned from their ways. I doubt it. I'm skeptical, very skeptical. I think they'll be up to some more intervention somewhere else. You see, that's what you get with these administrations. They'll be good on a couple fronts of intervention. They'll say, hey, we're going to pull back from this front of intervention and that front, but we're going to scale up X, Y, and Z over here in this intervention, in this regime coup and all this stuff. And even if it's not direct military aid and support, when it's clandestine stuff like the Arab Spring, those are just deadly violent insurrections that they stir up all over the globe too, to disastrous consequences, because people don't like it when other people come into their country and try to play God, especially people who don't understand their culture, don't get it. They don't want to be a part of their grand schemes for remaking the world into a social justice, undifferentiated blob of sameness. People just don't want it, and they resent it. And they also resent it when they're physically in pain because of the horrible carnage that are unleashed, that's unleashed by these interventions, both the coups, the instigated coups, and the more direct interventions. I want to get to email that a listener sent. We get lots of nice comments from folks all over the world and the country of America. And this one kind of just represents, what we're all about. And it's from a person named Elise. She says, hello, David. I've been listening to and enjoying your show from France since it was mentioned on the Michael Malice podcast. The show the other day where you spoke of preemptive coercion really struck home. Currently in France, there is the choice on how to educate children. School is not obligatory. However, Macron announced a preemptive order back in October that homeschooling will be banned to stop Islamic radicalism. Really? What's the percentage? He says that children are to learn French values, so going to school will be an obligation. Currently, our daughter is in school, but we see how toxic it is and want to homeschool her. And now this. Anyway, keep up the good work and getting the truth out there. I hope more people will wake up from the trance. Warmly, Elise. So, I mean, this is a great illustration of why it's so important to understand the principle of rejecting preemptive violence under all circumstances. You see, this is why I have a problem with a lot of folks in the conservative movement who say, well, just a little bit of interventionist violence here. Let's get some robust tariffs here. Let's have, a paid family child leave, mandates for government, for businesses here, there, all this kind of interventionist, just a little bit of force intervening here. And once you accept that principle, you have no moral foundation, no cultural momentum to stop it when that preemptive violence starts to apply to things closer to home, things like homeschooling, you see? And that's why I have the biggest problem with this. You know, you hear about conservatives even saying, hey, we need to spend more on community colleges. No, we don't need to spend your money for anything. You need to be left alone. Why do you want to make a monopoly like government somehow work in an effective way? They don't have any reason to work in an effective way. They are a monopoly. They are a legalized monopoly that uses and introduces preemptive coercion to get what it wants, to get what governments want, right? And so the idea that, we'll make exceptions for this principle of rejecting preemptive violence here and there, it always comes back to bite you. It always does. And the conservative movement always fails because they never want to get this principle right. The left fails too in the same regard. That's why their projects fall apart. But the point is, at least the left is open in their worship of the state. Conservatives say, oh, no, we don't want centralized planning. We don't want big government, just a little bit big government, just mildly big government, and we'll make it work in our interest. No, that's never going to work. That's a loser's game. It will never work because you get these immoral foundations for law, and then they end up getting applied to your right to homeschool. Always with an excuse, always with, there's radicals, so therefore we're going to stop everyone's ability to educate their children the way they see fit. How repulsive is that? And that happens because France is a country that has long ago abandoned any kind of concept of preventing preemptive violence. But America still has a little bit better footing, at least for now, in some ways. And we better not lose it because the result is chaos. The result is anarcho-tyranny, and we don't want any of that. Back in just a moment with more on A Neighbor's Choice.
Ronald Reagan would turn over in his grave if he saw what's going on today.
Crazy things are happening.
You cannot be afraid. You've got to stand up for what you believe is right.
But one thing is for sure.
You can't trust anybody.
For talk, news, and information, you can count on us.
Enough is enough. I mean, I almost blew a gasket.
Good for the country.
I know what I'm talking about. A lot of wackos out there.
Your connection to talk about it. The all-new News Talk 1040 W8.
At the State Department today, President Biden laid out his foreign policy plans, including using diplomacy with allies and adversaries, he says, but also putting countries like Russia on notice.
We will not hesitate to raise the cost on Russia and defend our vital interest and our people. And we will be more effective in dealing with Russia when we work in coalition and coordination with other like-minded partners.
Former President Trump's legal team signaling that the president will not testify for his impeachment trial next week. House impeachment managers had sent a letter asking the former president to testify under oath about his conduct January 6th, he's charged with inciting an insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. House Democrats debating whether to move ahead with a vote to remove Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene from committee posts. Greene, who claimed Trump won the election, spoke on the House floor today denouncing QAnon conspiracy theories she had admitted to supporting. I'm Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gronowski, your host, and we're returned live across FM and AM in Florida and worldwide on our podcasts and video stream. And joining me now to explore current events is Laverne Spicer. How you doing, Laverne?
I'm fine, and you?
I'm doing great. You know, I saw your commentary on Twitter during the madness that was going on around Ocasio-Cortez's crumbling narrative. And I thought, I'd like to get your take on that on our radio program. You kind of had a succinct way of putting it, didn't you?
Okay. And I also have Ruben here with me, Ruben Young. And thank you for having me on.
Yeah. And well, first I want to give people a little context. You founded a organization called Curly's House Food Bank.
Yes.
Which serves the Miami-Dade area. So you can give us a little insight on that first as a background?
Okay. Over 20 years ago, I started Curly's House, and it was all about the legacy of my mentor. And my mentor name is Kazi King. She was a pioneer beautician. So after she passed, we started Curly's House, and it's all about giving back, helping people in the community that really need it the most, especially now with the COVID-19. Many people are suffering from food and, they're not working. Many businesses have closed. So people are really going through a rough time. So we have a food pantry that help people. We also give them clothing, and we help them with the basic necessities of life. And we help encourage them and empower them so that they won't give up or feel, abandoned by people right about now, especially. But we are here to empower and encourage our community and to show them what it's all about, walking in love, peace, and understanding.
Yeah, your website says that Curly's House of Style and Hope Relief Food Bank will not let any needy or underserved client leave our facility without food or other assistance, regardless of race, creed, ethnicity, residential location. So you serve Miami-Dade and Broward and other local counties in Florida. So what's your guiding philosophy that led you to create that? What motivates you to spend your work and time in the philanthropic space?
Well, I always believe in giving back and helping people. That's just who I am. That's just my material, genetic makeup. It's all about giving and helping those that are less fortunate. Mm-hmm. So when I first started Curly's House, it was no organization in our community that was really reaching out to help anybody back then. So we would see people eating out of the trash can because it was a grocery store in the back of the beauty salon. We see people going in the trash can to eat, and we just wanted to do something to help restore their dignity, to let them know that, hey, you don't have to eat, the food you're finding in the trash can, the food you're finding on the corners and stuff. So, and it's also a ministry. It's a ministry that blesses many. We are all about Matthew 25, where in the Bible where he said, when you feed them, you're feeding me. When you clothe them, you're clothing me. So we are a ministry that blesses many people. And so many, we have a lot of single parents. We have mothers that have 9 and 10 kids that are really struggling. And unfortunately, the food stamps is not enough. It's just not enough to help them, and our seniors. A lot of seniors in our community receive $5 to $10 in food stamps monthly. Right. So therefore, they're struggling to put food on the table. So we are here to help them make it through the hard times. And I also want people to know that, if you lost your job because of the COVID-19, with many businesses, that were shut down for 3 and 4 months, people have been struggling to feed their families. But I want them to know that, if you need help, you could come here to our food bank. We're open Monday through Friday. We give out food on Tuesday through Friday from 11 to 3. Each and every day we are here. We are here to help our community. We're here to, just lift them up and show them love and let them know that someone cares.
I'm speaking with Laverne Spicer, who is the founder of Curly's House Foodbank.org, which you can check out online and see how you can get involved. A lot of our listeners are in the Florida region, so we want to give a shout out to folks who have need or would like to help them and what they're doing to provide for those in need. Laverne, I want to turn to some of the comments I saw on your Twitter page, because you do engage with the public debate going on. One thing you said earlier today was, I'm a black woman and I don't subscribe to the victim mentality that the Democrats want me to. That's why I'm censored online and harassed every single day by liberals. They call me names, they inbox me nasty messages and try to bring me down. Sorry, but I am nobody's victim. And I have to wonder, what you described in your work, why would they want to take down someone who's out there helping the people who are most in need? I mean, that's the entire foundation of the liberal mindset, to try to help the poor, right?
Right. And, it's just plain evil. And I think it's so sad, because one thing Biden said when he was running, he said, well, if you're going to vote for President Trump, then you're a black person, then you're not black enough, Mm-hmm. So how can he define a black person, or how can he define what makes me black enough? I'm a black woman. I'm an independent thinker, and I'm going to speak my mind, and I'm going to say what I feel. And yes, they're always in my inbox. I get called plenty of names, coon, all kind of names, and it's really sad, but that's okay, because at the end of the day, I'm going to fight for what I believe in. Right. And I'm going to stand up. I'm going to speak my mind. I'm an independent thinker. I don't need anybody to think for me. And I believe in the First Amendment of the Constitution that gives me the right to say what I want to say. Right. Regardless, I don't have to agree with the liberals with the things they're writing or the things that they are saying. But once again, I'm nobody's victim. I am an independent thinker. And I don't care about them harassing me, because, I ran against Frederica Wilson. Yeah, I got 68,000 votes, but that was great because I am in a mostly all Democratic, area. Most of the people are Democratic here. So for me to get 68,000 votes out of an all Democratic base was absolutely huge. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, I got more votes than anybody that ever ran against her. Wow. So for that, I am very proud. That showed that a lot of people really supported me. And I pulled the Democratic votes as well as Patriots votes, as well as the Republicans that backed me. And as also the Democrats supported me as well, especially a lot of the seniors that I have been helping for years. They was really excited about the fact that I was running. I've been encouraging my community to stand up and fight and stop being brainwashed by the politics that the Democrats present to the black community, because they come out, they go to the senior buildings, they say, hey, vote for me, I'm going to help you. But then once they win those seats and we call those offices and we reach out to them, then they're no longer available to help us. Right. So, it's like You're damn if you do, you're damn if you don't.
But they're always available to harass you in the inbox as you're trying to feed the homeless. That's what they're always available to do, you know. Not available to do anything good, but they're available to harass people. You know, we just had a liberal on our show earlier on the program, and I didn't attack him or call him names. We just agreed on what we were talking about in the specifics, right? And I wish that we could have a conversation across party lines again, where people wouldn't want to demonize people just because they think differently. At the end of the day, you're putting your skin in the game to help serve those in need in your community by feeding the hungry, helping those who've lost a job. And yet, somehow, if you don't think exactly like the folks on the other side, you're just treated in such a nasty way. So I hope, do you see that there's any sign of change in the Miami-Dade region where you are at, where people are saying, you know what, I'm tired of this cancel culture attitude. I'm tired of the bigotry. I'm just over it. Are you seeing any big change on the ground in the community?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Seeing a lot.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I like the question. This is Ruben Young, one of the congressional candidates also running. But, you know, I'm listening to the conversation. I just had to chime in. I hope I hadn't upset anyone, but there's a lot of work to do in Miami-Dade County. I mean, there's a lot of getting past a lot of the brainwash. You know, the Dade County, to me, being someone who's always respected law and order, is out of control. Right is now wrong, and wrong is now right, and left is up is down. We're now doing some turntables, some flips. And as much as we try to do the right thing and try to not, breach our public trust when we're out here trying to serve, as Laverne has been serving all these years, and I'm glad that you picked up on the fact that she's doing all this, and yet still you have people that think one way, demonizing her. And I'm being a friend of hers as well, I get a chance to read some of the comments. I get a chance to be around when people call her on her phone and make those types of threats, all because she doesn't agree with their beliefs or philosophy. You know, she said earlier, we have a right to think differently. We don't have to think the same way. But, you know, as you pointed out, this is no longer the America piece of a dream that we remember, because I was born in the 60s. So I remember, everyone trying to respect each other no matter what party. I mean, we was all stand on our own principle, but we was Americans. And during the earlier parts in the 40s and the 50s, when America needed to come together, we was there for each other. It wasn't no one party fighting a war against the Japanese or fighting wars in Vietnam. We all came together because we had a vested interest. And to see what's going on now, it's just complete anarchy. And we're praying, at least I know I'm a praying person. I know we pray every day for some type of control. But right now, the Democrats are in the majority. And I don't know what our future would be, although I still believe that the election was stolen. I read the laws, and it was stolen. A lot of those congresspersons, they violated their oath of office by changing a constitutional process without a constitutional amendment. They took an oath of office. And if you look at 18 USC 1918 and 5 USC 3331, 3333, 7311, you agree with me. But right now we have no way to enforce these laws, and we certainly can't depend on Nancy Pelosi to do anything different. So I hope I didn't upset the apple cart, but I just had to chime in on this.
No, it's fine. I wanted to get your riff on this too, because Laverne Spicer, she posted earlier today another point that I just wanted to draw to our audience. It's good insights. The mask is a visual sign of the power they have over you, nothing more. That's why it remains the constant part of the COVID narrative, no matter what you do. Do you share that same concern, that same insight?
Yes, I do. I share that belief because, we just like we've had reports about the COVID virus, we also had other reports. And so it boils down to, who do we believe? A lot of the medical professionals, at least some of the medical professionals, they're not all in unison. They're not all in agreement about this COVID-19 virus. And, it's like we've been bamboozled, because you see how the Democrats claim that we're in such a pandemic Well, yet when elections came, I mean, they sent out all these mail-out ballots, which are unconstitutional, in my opinion. But they send these ballots out, but yet they still showed up at the polls. And my understanding of the law is when you change the process and you said that you're going to do mail-in ballots, which is not part of our constitutional scheme, but when you say you're going to do mail-in ballots, well, why are we not having a fear of letting people vote by mail-in ballots, but they voted at the precinct? At least the majority of the voters voted at the precinct. So to me, that was like a hypocrisy of democracy. It was a hypocrisy of democracy. You said one thing, but you did something else.
Right. And that's what you see is that people are so power hungry, they'll sell out everything, including their own soul, just to get an ounce more power, won't they?
Yes, and that's what we're seeing take place in this day and age. It's really sad what's going on. You know, our country is basically has been sold basically to China. It's being stolen. I mean, our country's being stolen from our children. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have a lot of foreign influences dictating, a lot of selling of America piece by piece by piece. And they've been, the Democrats, at least the party leadership, have been enjoying the selling of America. And when you come and try to go against the grain, like what President Trump did, he went against the grain. And I tell people all the time, he was interfering with their money. So he had to go by any means necessary. I mean, I think that's what someone said, by any means necessary. So we have to look at this from from a perspective of what is right for America and what is wrong with America. And right now, the stealing of that, certifying of that election, when we know that according to the state constitution and federal law, electors have to be appointed, not elected in November. They have to be appointed in November by state legislatures. And President Trump's electors were certainly appointed by state legislatures, but yet this thing came up with this alleged so-called riot. We're finding reports that was a plan. Nancy Pelosi had control over providing additional Capitol Police, but from what we know, she refused. So she said at the end of the day, Joe Biden will be certified.
Yeah, the swamp is always up to all kinds of mischief, and they don't care whether they sacrifice everybody to maintain their little power. That's why Nancy Pelosi called the Capitol building her sacred temple. Because what do they do in sacred temples? They sacrifice, human sacrifice.
Right.
That's exactly what they do.
That's what we're seeing take place.
That's right. Well, Laverne, I want to end on a positive note again, because it's good to look at the problem, which is politics, but let's go back to the solution. So tell us a little bit more about what you have planned with your work and your food bank, because that's what my show's all about. The problem is politics. Okay. It divides us, and the solution is when people like you roll up your sleeve and serve people with your own skin in the game.
Yes, I've been in the trenches for years fighting for my community and my constituents, and I will continue to do so. I will continue to do that, and I will continue to run for this seat that I ran for last year. I'm going to roll up my sleeves and get in the boxing ring again, and I will continue to do what I've been doing, fighting. I also want to say, yes, while I'm on that, we need donations for the food bank to continue what we're doing. So anybody that would like to help us, feed our community, please do so. You can also check out the website, which is Turley's House, foodbank.org, and you could donate to help us feed people. If you're in the neighborhood, you can also bring by donation of food, clothing, because we do give away clothing to people that really need it. And if they're going out for job interviews, we help them prepare for that as well.
Well, very good. Well, I want to point people again to curlyshousefoodbank.org to check out your work and stay in touch. So we'll look forward to talking to you guys soon.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for having us on.
Very good. A Neighbor's Choice will continue after this short break. Hello, this is David Gronowski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality, grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a 6th-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pastures beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR. Who is your neighbor? Dave and Wally are team drivers for Oakley Transport. One day, they came across a very serious accident on the highway. Some might pass on by, but Dave and Wally saw there was no time to waste. They jumped into action and saved 2 people's lives with moments to spare. That's the kind of courageous love we need more of today. It reflects the respected culture Oakley Transport develops with their driving professionals. CDLA licensed drivers. Join Oakley Transport today for a rewarding career. Visit oakleytransport.com. That's oakleytransport.com. Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck on a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
Get the best coverage of the big game from a source you can trust. TampaBay.com. Powered by the Tampa Bay Times award-winning sports department, you'll get insights on the X's and O's, plus the latest updates from on and off the field. Subscribe now, and you'll receive an additional 20% off total access to TampaBay.com. From the greatest game of all time to the greatest quarterback of all time, choose the Tampa Bay Times. Go to TampaBay.com today.
Neighbor's Choice is back. I'm David Gronowski, your host here. We're live on FM and AM and podcast video stream on our website, oddneighborschoice.com. Patrick emails me saying, I enjoy listening to your show and have heard you bring up Bitcoin a few times. I would encourage you to look into the history of Bitcoin, how it was infiltrated by Blockstream and has been intentionally crippled to keep it from working as designed. He says, there's a lot of disinformation campaigns out there about what Bitcoin is and how it's not BTC, the digital coin that is sold on most exchanges as Bitcoin. And that is something I just don't know much at all about. So if you or anyone else listening has more information on that, you can share it with me. I just don't know enough about that subject, but it's something that is open to being something to look at. Another story I wanted to cover real quick is The Sun says, living in fear. Putin fears being killed like Gaddafi in new Russian revolution as protests rage over Navalny's prison sentence. Isn't it interesting, by the way, as soon as Biden gets in the White House, they start off a new little thing like this. And he has a good reason to be concerned. Well, I don't know if this is just probably just the state media from the West trying to spin it a certain way. But, this is what the Western powers do. They'll prop you up if you play ball with their financial interests, and they will do a mob butchering of you by sending you to the streets like Gaddafi and other figures, in very gruesome ways. They don't play around with that stuff. And these people, I'm not saying Putin is some saint here, but all I'm saying is this is the way that the Western powers play when they get tired of, a leader getting in the way of resources that they want to have more financial control of in a certain country. And the countries that they attack are the ones that don't play ball. That's as simple as that. If you play ball with the Western governments and you do what they tell you to do, and you become a vassal state for them, that's okay. If you buck them at all and want to have national sovereignty, you better watch out. And that doesn't mean that those folks who are the target of those regime change coups are good, but binary thinkers think that way. They think, oh, if you're criticizing American and Western foreign policy, therefore you like the team that is the other team. It's like, so stupid. We don't have time for childish, infantilized thinking like that. We just don't. It's just, we don't have any time for that. But another story that talk about scapegoats. The knives come out for Josh Hawley. This is in theatlantic.com. The elite conservative world saw the Missouri senator as America's next great statesman. Instead, he's revealed uncomfortable truths about the movement. So they're going to go for him next. He's the big target. The other scapegoat is the Marjorie Taylor Greene congresswoman from, from I believe South Carolina, is it? And she, has become the new scapegoat supreme for the establishment in D.C. because they always have to have, look, just because you're scapegoat doesn't mean that you're good or you're the good guy. Okay, again, binary-minded thinkers, that's how they process things. If you say someone's a scapegoat, that means that they're good? No, that doesn't mean that. It means that they are being used as a binding agent, as a common enemy to unify people in a coalition like the left has, neoliberal left, where they unite people based on mutual hatred of a common enemy. And so Trump was that vessel that fueled them and gave them oxygen for their entire movement for many years. And now they're like, wait a second, we need energy. We don't have energy. We are fueled by hate. They're not fueled by love. If they don't have a common enemy, this kind of ideology, as big and fragile as it is, will devolve into internecine conflict and rivalry and attacks and scapegoating and finger pointing and one-upmanship as to who will have the most power and who is the most victimized. And all that stuff would just turn into all against all. So it's essential that the hegemonic victimists find a new scapegoat. So they're not satisfied with their political defeat of their past binding agent, the scapegoat Trump. Now they will scramble for a new scapegoat to focus all their ire and hatred, looking for another lightning rod to prop up with their media machine so they can channel their internal rivalries and frustrations onto a common enemy. And now they've chosen Marjorie Taylor Greene. They've got Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley as other targets. And again, I don't share the ideology of all three of those people, right? But I'm just showing you the sausage making of politics. I'm showing you, I'm deconstructing it so you can see the psychological forces that push people to act the way they do in the political sphere. So that's it for hour one of today's broadcast. We'll be back in just a moment. After this short break, we'll resume with Science in You with Dr. You, as well as Jeff Deist of the Mises Institute. So for now, Godspeed.
Your home for news, talk, and information. 1040 WHBO Pinellas Park. Tampa Bay's all new News Talk 1040.
It's the only way I get news.
From ABC News, I'm Michelle Franzen. Happening now in the House, lawmakers are debating whether to vote on a resolution to remove GOP Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene from her committee assignments. Greene, an admitted supporter of QAnon conspiracy theories, including 9/11 was a hoax and mass shootings were staged, spoke earlier on the floor to walk back those comments.
I was allowed to believe things that weren't true, and I would ask questions about them and talk about them. And that is absolutely what I regret.
Earlier today, House Rules Democratic Chair Jim McGovern says Greene also promoted posts suggesting politicians should be killed and made anti-Semitic comments. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy on the floor just a short time ago says Greene apologized to him and says he'll hold her accountable, but claims Democrats are overstepping.
This resolution sets a dangerous new standard that will only deepen divisions within this House.
Today, at a separate Homeland Security Committee hearing, National Director and CEO of the Anti-Defamation League, Jonathan Greenblatt, testified that the Capitol siege is clear evidence the threat of domestic terrorism can be triggered by incendiary rhetoric.
People in positions of authority need to clearly and consistently call out disinformation, extremism, and hate, whether, again, it's coming from the President of the United States or a first-term member of Congress.
The impeachment trial set to begin next week. House impeachment managers called on former President Trump to testify at next week's trial. Today, his attorneys responded, calling it a public relations stunt, signaling that the former president is unlikely to testify, claiming the trial is unconstitutional. Earlier today, President Biden outlined his foreign policy, saying he is bringing diplomacy back to rebuild morale within the State Department and also abroad with allies. He says the priority is the pandemic and national security. You're listening to ABC News.
Here is some great news. If you missed the deadline to sign up for health insurance, or if you sign up for a plan that you're just not happy with, you still have a choice. It's called MediShare. It's the affordable alternative to health insurance. And it's worked beautifully for 25 years. They have more than 400,000 members now around the country. MediShare is a Christian healthcare sharing ministry. And over the years, members have shared over $3 billion of each other's medical bills. So they could help share your needs too. And best of all, you could save a lot of money with MediShare. The typical savings for a family is about $500 a month. Your savings could be more or less, but think about what you could do with that extra money every month. You're not stuck with a high-cost health plan. You can join MediShare anytime, so call them today and check it out. Here's the number to find out more, and there's no pressure. They are super easy to talk to. Call 877-26-BIBLE. That's 877-26-BIBLE. 877-26-BIBLE.
In Ohio, the family of Andre Hill speaking out following yesterday's indictment of former Columbus, Ohio police officer Adam Coy. He's accused of fatally shooting Hill, an unarmed black man, in December. Shauna Barnett is Hill's sister.
We want Adam Coy convicted of all the charges. No partials. We want all the charges. We want him incarcerated.
Coy's facing several charges, including murder. The NYPD and civilian board that oversees the department agreeing to new rules for officer discipline.
The new guidelines call for harsher penalties for excessive force, false statements, and profiling. CCRB Chairman Fred Davies said it's an unprecedented step in the right direction, even though the police commissioner remains the final arbiter of punishment.
I've always supported the CCRB having final authority for its cases.
Police Commissioner Dermot Shea said the guidelines will help the NYPD restore trust.
I believe that can happen with me as the final arbiter.
Shea said it could be a national model, though critics worry discipline remains opaque. Aaron Katursky, ABC News, New York.
Former President Trump has resigned from SAG-AFTRA union. That union represents thousands of professionals, including actors, musicians, and journalists. In a letter, the former president said he was resigning immediately, citing what he calls the union's, quote, dismal record. That union voted to take disciplinary action following the Capitol siege. This is ABC News.
Are you more than $10,000 in debt? Feel like you're on a never-ending treadmill, staying in one place and never getting ahead with those minimum payments? Do you feel like there is no way out? There are programs in place to help you get free of your debt, and you don't have to pay the entire amount you owe. The program at Total Financial Freedom can help you get debt-free in months instead of decades. Call Total Financial now at 800-464-7144. That's 800-464-7144.
I'm Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
Hello, this is David Gronowski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a sixth-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR.
You can't have a fresh outlook on the new year if you're staring through a chipped or cracked windshield. Autoglass America will fix it and give you up to $150 cash back to help pay holiday bills. With qualifying insurance, we'll come to you with mobile service and install a premium quality replacement with a lifetime warranty at no cost to you. Get a great outlook on the new year with a new windshield and New Year's cash from Autoglass America. 813-96-GLASS, 813-96-GLASS.
From the heart of Central Florida, you're listening to the most electrifying show in media. A Neighbor's Choice. I'm your host, your neighbor, David Gronowski. Welcome back to the program. We are soaring high across the I-4 corridor on FM and AM live. You can email me, hello@aneighborschoice.com, or search for David Gronowski on YouTube or Facebook, where you can watch the video stream live or on replay. Also, if you're listening on our podcast, make sure you write a review and subscribe, as that helps expand this message that we bring to you free of charge every day to more and more people just like you, ready to challenge toxic groupthink wherever they find it. And now we're starting our Science in You segment today because it's Thursday, which means we're going to talk about science and you. And to do so, we have with us our chief science advisor, physicist, Dr. Yu. How you doing?
Thank you, David, for having me on. I'm doing great.
Well, very good. I want to resume what we were talking about on the last time we talked, which was scientists discover a new state of matter, liquid glass. Now, we talked a little bit about that at the end of the show, but I wanted you to kind of revisit that and give us an explanation as to how we could have a new state of matter.
Yes, the glass research is considered one of the top research in material science because if we can make the strongest material and as well as transparent as containing a device, so that make life so much easier. So spacecraft will be transparent. So we don't need to build small windows. So entire things can be visible. So that's why it's a very important research. And what this research scientists discovered, they said, well, why are they study solid glass? They're doing solid glass study. They find that there's a one state, not solid. It's not a liquid, not a gas. Okay, not a gas shape. However, this is called a colloid and the solid. So this is a state between the solid and the water state. So what they said, well, so you can use a solid material and under certain way to structure, and you can make this one as a transparent, just like a glass. You can kind of have a transparent. But how you make this one, so that's called a liquid glass. The liquid is the colloid, is just is a type of intermediate of state, between solid and the liquid. So, but I just try to explain the physics, and this is nothing new actually. So if you consider many things, many solid objects, but if in liquid state, you find that they are transparent. Just glass, just like ice. If you're icing them normally, you may not be easily to see through. However, if you make ice as a thin layer of water state, then you can see through it, like alcohol or many things. So liquid state, you can see through it just like a glass effect. However, when you make a solid glass, you have to cure it a certain way and freeze it so fast. Exterior and make interior like a glass state. So that's why you can see it. But this state, I just want to tell you, this is actually very simple. If you consider a fiberglass, a bundle of fiberglass, if you use a bundle of fiberglass as a window, so you can see externally. And the fiberglass itself has a stiffness and just like solid. But I try to use this one to describe called the liquid glass state. So if you read the article, it has a very interesting talk about that. This liquid state has one thing just like a fiberglass. Along the longitudinal direction, it's connected, right? But for each fiber on the free surface of free surface, you can rotate. So that means they are not connected with the neighboring fibers. What's that important? Whenever you transmit the light through fibers, you need a free surface. The free surface can reflect the light. Light is a vibration, reflection of vibration waves propagated through the forward section. So they said if we can make the solid object and make curing in the way, so the lateral surface can just like a fiber surface on the lateral without being constrained with the neighboring surface. So then we find that we can be a transparent, and it's a solid, and the state. So I hope the audience understand. In order for something to transparent, you need two things. Number one, you need the transmission frequency of the solid material to be the visible light frequency. So when you have a visible light shining on that one, from one end, the visible light propagates inside of a glass, inside the object, come out with the same frequency. So that's why you can see. And also you have the second necessary condition. You have to have a free surface reflect them. So that's why the light can reflect in the fiberglass, even though you bend many ways, and it still can propagate. And this is the state of liquid glass.
That's very interesting. Let's turn to another story real quick. In Scientific American, did a supermassive black hole influence the evolution of life on Earth? The idea isn't as crazy as it might sound. This is by our friend Avi Loeb. We've had him on the program. So would you summarize quickly what he's saying and what the interesting thing is for our audience?
Okay. He basically go over the history of evolution of a black hole. And he said, Albert Einstein, the genius, in 1939, published a paper, say, black hole does not exist in nature. It only exists from his general relativity equation, okay? However, he said, many scientists a century later, they discover a quasar. As they said, a quasar is a power source of electromagnetic, the light, and a quasar exists in the supermassive, in the center of galaxy. So basically say, okay, later on we prove there are supermassive black hole exist. And then he could go over, say, that's 100 century later. But as he said, decades later, scientists discover almost every supermassive black hole exists in every galaxy. And he said later on, somebody win Nobel Prize here in physics, being awarded in physics. He mentioned the name Andrea and another called Reinhard. So for provide evidence, say, okay, in the center of Milky Way galaxy, there's a black hole. So basically, he's talking about the black hole evolution of the theory of black hole. And since the Milky Way has a black hole, and that kind of affect our life. So that's why he never talk about direct impact to life, because Milky Way has a black hole. So that's why Milky Way can function as a normal one, so that we are part of a Milky Way, starts, sun system and orbit. So that's why we can have a life. It's on the very special space. So it's not much more about the science. It's much more about the discovery of the black hole, the history of black hole.
We're talking with Dr. Yu, a physicist, on our Science and News segment that we do every Thursday. And we'll take a quick break. But when we come back, we're going to get into this news story in Vice. U.S. Navy has patents on tech it says will engineer the fabric of reality. So-called UFO patents sound like they've been ripped from a science fiction novel. That's the story from Matthew Galt in Vice magazine. We'll get Dr. Yu's commentary on this story after this short message. David Gronowski here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals, join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER. Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck on a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
Some out of the area law firms advertise that they are the largest. Do you think large firms help your case? Possibly. But your case will receive personal care from local attorneys Catania and Catania. They are family-owned, Tampa Bay attorneys representing clients who have experienced auto and motorcycle accidents. Your case with Catania and Catania will seek to get a settlement in your favor expeditiously. Catania and Catania, serving Tampa Bay families for over 28 years. Referrals on request. Get the local law firm that will care for your case from beginning to end. They don't get paid if you don't get paid. Catania and Catania, putting families first. Car accident, motorcycle accident, call the local attorneys. Catania and Catania. Offices Tampa, not attorney spokesperson.
Hello, David Gronowski here. You're listening to Science and You, our Thursday science segment that we do on A Neighbor's Choice. Up next, we'll hear from Jeff Deist of the Mises Institute about the lay of the land and the economic world of our country today. But before we do that, I want to give a shout out to our friends at oakleytransport.com. That's oakleytransport.com, where they're looking for talented drivers, safe drivers, folks that want to be the backbone of keeping our supply chain going in America. They are the leaders of liquid food grade transportation in America. And if you're ready to start your career as a driver, hitting the road to keep America fed, then you could do so by going to oakleytransport.com and letting them know that A Neighbor's Choice sent you. So we resume now with Dr. Yu on our science conversation. This story is interesting in Vice magazine because of how sensational it is. The U.S. Navy has patents on tech it says will engineer the fabric of reality. It has patents on weird and little understood technology. According to patents, the article says, filed by the Navy, it is working on a compact fusion reactor that could power cities, an engine that works using inertial mass reduction, and a hybrid aerospace underwater craft. Dubbed the UFO patents, the war zone has reported that the Navy had to build prototypes of some of the outlandish tech to prove that it worked. Dr. Salvatore Cesar Pais is the man behind the patent, and the war zone has proven the man exists, at least on paper. He's worked for a number of different departments in the Navy, including the Naval Air Warfare Center, Aircraft Division, the Strategic Systems Programs, The patents all build on each other, but at their core is something that he calls the Pais effect. This is the idea that controlled motion of electrically charged matter via accelerated vibration and or accelerated spin subjected to smooth yet rapid acceleration transients in order to generate extremely high energy, high intensity electromagnetic fields. Essentially, he is claiming to use properly spun electromagnetic fields to contain a fusion reactor. That plasma fusion reaction he claims to have invented will revolutionize power consumption. Experts theorize that a functioning fusion reactor would lead to cheap and ubiquitous energy. One of the Navy patents describes what the propulsion system and fusion drive would be used for, a hybrid aerospace underwater craft. According to the patent, the craft could travel land, sea, and outer space at incredible speeds. Other patents filed by the Navy include a high-temperature superconductor, an electromagnetic field generator, and a high-frequency gravitational wave generator. It sounds like science fiction, and the Navy has been skeptical too. The Navy authorities called BS on the inventions, and his patents went through a lengthy internal review at NAVAIR. The war zone obtained emails about the bureaucratic fight between the inventor and the Navy through a Freedom of Information Act request and revealed that the mad scientist won. According to the patents, some of the technology is operable. That means the Navy is claiming that some of the wild tech works and has been demonstrated to Navy officials. The physics of what they're claiming go beyond theoretical and beyond ken of the layman or the lowly science reporter. Well, now we have Dr. Yu, our physicist friend, to help us make sense of it. So what do you think of this?
Well, I believe audience being confused by these jargons, right? Something, nobody understand. A low-level reporter may not be able to even write this one correct.
It's always those mad scientists. They use jargon, and it's very confusing. Some of it's wacky, and some of it's real,
That's correct. I just looked through his biography. He's an aerospace engineer. So he's not a physics background. So he apparently he worked at the Air Force, for many years, for certain years. And to be simple, whatever they described here is a propulsion system. The propulsion system. So use chemical as a propellant, or use a nuclear type of materials, but it did not specify which type of a proper the material they use as input. However, what I read is so this propulsion system can be used on the spacecraft, so like airplane or spacecraft or missiles. Okay, and also can use the craft, like underwater submarines. So that's why. So the only thing is different than all this different type is he said that they are smaller size, miniature size, and contained use nuclear fusion as energy. So that means it can fly faster, more energy, and fly longer, and so has more power. I read them and I found that there's one thing, maybe new, okay, is he talking about generate spun electromagnetic field. So that's electromagnetic is spinning. So if you think about it, when you can say you can use proper eject something, let something rotate, spinning. What happens? You get a higher velocity of that spinning project. That means you will get a higher reaction and pushing you, you get higher reaction force too. And more stable, just like bullets. When you're shooting the bullets has to be a sliding inside of a barrel and rotating, and that bullet has higher energy and propel longer distance. And he mentioned about that's part of it. He used electromagnetic field with a spinning field to control the plasma for fusion reaction. So that's something, I believe that's something, theoretically you can be done and will be efficient. However, since the Navy had some kind of dispute with him, Navy talking about his invention. Navy said he's called bullshit. Called his invention is a bullshit invention. So if that's the case, so what I gathered from here is, so he may not be a part of a naval researcher, because if you are part of a naval researcher and your research is classified, has such tremendous application, you are definitely not allowed to publish any patents unless naval agree. But the naval military would never publish a patent, will have an adversary effect by your enemies. So that could never happen. So I would think that most of them are hiding. Mm-hmm. So the so-called published, this one is only theoretical. There is no practical usage, even though some principle we maybe try it, but I don't believe this is something revolutionary. Mm-hmm. Of course, it has some good aspect.
Right, very interesting. We have just a little bit of time here. There's a story in SciTechDaily.com that says, searching for dark matter through the fifth dimension, new theoretical physics discovery to help unravel the mysteries of dark matter. So they're still trying to unravel that dark matter, Dr. Yu, but they've got a fifth dimension now that they've introduced in a recent paper, I guess, where they're trying to introduce this idea of a fifth dimension to get this thing through the finish line. Have you heard of this story at all?
No, but I know the results. And by end of the result, they find out the so-called dark matter does not exist. It's just electromagnetic, attractions from the sea of electromagnetic gas, medium in the universe. Nothing else.
And similarly, Wired.co.uk says a rebel physicist has an elegant solution to a quantum mystery. The theories we have to describe the nature of the universe are completely incompatible. Enter an eccentric Polish physicist with a possible solution to the biggest of conundrums. So he's trying to solve the quantum mystery. It seems like all physics headlines are all about trying to solve irreconcilable mysteries, aren't they, Dr. Yu?
That's correct. However, their approach is wrong. They try to approach physical world with this kind of mathematics method. It were never successful. That's what I mean.
Yeah, you have to have skin in the game. You can't just stay in the ivory tower of mathematical equations. Although those are helpful, you must first demonstrate that what you're doing is physically real, right? Physically demonstrate.
That's correct.
Demonstrate.
Absolutely.
Very good. Well, Dr. Yu, it's always a pleasure to have you on the program. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And that's it for Science and You, folks. But you can catch all the episodes of Science and You, the segments, on aneighborschoice.com, where you get a world-class lesson in physics applied to all sorts of topics in the world of science. Because the truth unites all these different fields into a coherent picture, one that can be simplified and understandable for even young children. Our Neighbor's Choice is excited about advancing that mission of making science understandable and making it make sense in a way that doesn't have to be cloistered up in ivory towers with confusing jargon and equations that don't lead to anywhere in real life. So we'll take a quick break and return with Jeff Deist on A Neighbor's Choice.
There is all kinds of lunacy going on. The madness of 2020.
Weekdays 11 to 2.
I'm just so fed up with these Democrats. It's unbelievable.
Get it straight from Chris Plant.
They're so hypocritical. It makes me sick.
It's the Chris Plant Show.
This has just got me going on.
And the left is waging war against the police in the United States.
Telling it like it is.
You should be thanked profusely for getting to the point. You're a voice of reason in the sea of idiots.
The Chris Plant Show. Weekdays 11 to 2. News Talk 1040 WHBO.
The House is expected to vote soon on whether to remove Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene from her committee assignments. The newly elected Georgia Republican has been criticized for her support of conspiracy theories and suggesting that school shootings were staged.
What you need to know about me is I'm a very regular American, just like the people I represent in my district. and most people across the country.
Green expressing regret for some past remarks. Former President Trump rejecting a request from House Democrats to testify under oath at his Senate impeachment trial next week. President Biden's raising the maximum number of refugees allowed in the U.S. every year to 125,000.
The message I want the world to hear today: America is back. America is back. Diplomacy is back at the center of our foreign policy.
And the president signing an executive order to do so. The Department of Health and Human Services says COVID cases are on a downward trend nationwide. Daria Albinger, ABC News.
And the Neighbor's Choice returns. I'm David Gronowski. We're live on FM and AM and worldwide on our podcast and video stream. Make sure you go to aneighborschoice.com for all the action that we're doing, all the content that we're producing. And now we return with a great guest who is a regular friend of the program, the president of the Mises Institute, Jeff Deist. How you doing, Jeff?
Hey, good afternoon, David. Great to be with you.
Yeah, and it's great to have you on again. And we always get into some interesting conversations together. And of course, it's always a breath of fresh air to hear perspective that's not just trying to push for a party line or something. And that's what you bring to the table. You did a story this week that I wanted to dive into about the GameStop saga. You said it unravels stakeholder theory. So maybe give us a little bit of a summary of what your argument here is. You know, the GameStop story got a lot of interest, and I think it's just the beginning of many other things like it to come. But what was your overall take here?
Well, a lot of your listeners may have only heard a little bit about this or followed it slightly, but basically GameStop's a retail chain that sells video games. And increasingly, they're becoming like Blockbuster Video because most people download games now online rather than go to a store and purchase them in a downloadable format. So their stock's been going down, as you might expect. A group of people got together on Reddit, not just for this purpose, but generally they created a group called Wall Street Bets, and they've gone around trying to mess with hedge funds and other investors by pooling their money together. And in this case, investing in GameStop stock to drive the price up. And a bunch of hedge funds in New York City had big short positions, meaning they had put a lot of money into the idea that GameStop shares were going down in price. So this was considered some sort of insurrection or something. And, of course, it's one of those things where the media wants to spin a narrative about who's allowed to control markets, who's an amateur, who's an expert, who's manipulating versus who is merely investing, and all these different things. So we really saw a sickening form of bias come out, because normally, David, if you think about it, the media at least likes to pretend to be on the side of the little guy against these rich fat cats on Wall Street manipulating things. But in this case, the whole narrative was turned upside down. It was, well, these sort of weird alt-right Redditor bros, and the implication is always that it was a bunch of guys, or even worse, a bunch of white guys, that they somehow manipulated things, attempting to raise the price, and then somehow they were all going to cash out. Well, I guess that's allowed by some investors and not by others. So that's what was so interesting about this, is it was really, if anything, a populist story. And, it's just interesting to me that populism is never a good thing when it's aimed at Washington, D.C., or when it's aimed at Wall Street, or whatever it might be. So this whole story, I think, it doesn't really have any heroes. It doesn't really have any villains. It's just the mechanisms of markets. And because we have this crazy monetary system in our country, we have a lot of volatility in those markets. So it's not really, in my opinion, about GameStop and what happened with its stock last week. It's more about the identities of the people involved. All of a sudden, these hedge funds, of all people, these hedge funds become the good guys, David. They become noble. And Washington Post is praising them. Whereas in any other situation, they'd be saying, well, these terrible greedy capitalists like Mitt Romney come in and they take all the blood out of a dying company, and they're vulture capitalists. So what you have to understand is that the mainstream media in this country is so shameless, and they take every story, no matter what, and take the facts and spin them to serve their narrative. And there's no truth, there's no principle beneath any of it.
Right. And you saw this coordination with NASDAQ and, people sounding the warning signs. Bloomberg, remember Mike Bloomberg said he was going to be a man of the people, and he was out there saying he had his press company say this is an insurrection, trying to tie that to the graphic image of the Capitol riot from a few weeks ago, right? So they try to do this stuff deliberately, and their whole game is betting that the public is too distracted or too ignorant or too low info to catch on to their little manipulations. Because when you put the word insurrection to describe the riot, and then you put and then you emphasize the deaths and everything, which is it's important to emphasize that when people die, but they only emphasize deaths when it fits their agenda, not when it's the BLM Antifa riots, not when it's the riots that Obama and Biden stoked across capitals in Egypt and Libya and Tunisia and so forth when they were in power before. So they want to manipulate reality with word games. They use the word insurrection, and then they attach it to this GameStop thing. And I think that was a big eye opener for a lot of folks who are not on the right, folks who are independent, to say, hey, wait a second. This kind of marginalization can easily fall onto me too if I'm buying GameStop stock, right?
Well, if we think about it, all an investment fund or a hedge fund is a coordinated effort between a lot of people. A lot of investors give hedge funds money, and some of them are rich individuals. Some of them are big institutions like Harvard, or maybe your local city's pension fund. Who knows?
Right.
A lot of people pull together, coordinate the efforts of their money. They put it in a fund. The managers of that fund go out there and try to make money with it. And one way they try to do that is they look at a company like GameStop and they say, hey, this company's dying. Its stock's going to go down. Let's take a big short position in the company, and let's really put the screws to them and make some money out of the decline of this company. So how is that different than a bunch of Redditors getting together and identifying this and saying, hey, look, this company is heavily shorted, but we like GameStop, or we like messing with hedge funds. So we're all going to coordinate and put our money together. We're just a bunch of schmoes on Reddit. But if there's 1 million of us and we all put in $100, you start to get into real money. Why is that not okay? So that's really the story here. And it's fascinating to me how duplicitous, how quick to turn our media really is. And I think that there's no other way. And I hate to do this because I hate the idea of left and right, which is not a neat paradigm any longer. But there's just an intense amount of left-wing bias in media. It's staggering, and I'm absolutely saying this as someone who doesn't really identify as being on the right. So it's gotten so bad. I think Trump exposed so much that it almost makes us wake up in the morning and say that these people are at war with us. They're at war with reality, and they want to harm us. They want to actively harm us by promoting their own narrative, their own reality, and they'll basically say anything. That in warfare, deception is just another tactic or tool or weapon. In other words, deception and dissembling and counterintelligence and counterinsurgency is as much a part of war as mustering a bunch of troops and going out with planes and tanks and bombs. So this is just part of a war, and it's not a happy feeling as an American to get up in the morning and feel like we're at war, an information war with our own press.
Well, what do you make of the the actions that Robinhood, the app, did to limit the ability for these folks to buy the GameStop stock? As a free market advocate, do you think that constitutes a type of fraud or something? I mean, it's like, you ban them so they can lose their money so that the rich guys can get all their money back. It seems very, very disturbing to me. It doesn't seem like something that would be going on like this in a free market if we had a real market, Well,
Robinhood is basically the Facebook of online trading. And here's what I mean by that. Robinhood is ostensibly free. They don't charge you to buy and sell securities on their platform. So whenever you see that, like Facebook is free, you know that you're the product, meaning you, the customer. And you are, in fact, the product, because when you join Robinhood, they take your data and they sell it. They sell it. So, you suffer a loss of privacy in that sense. And so Robinhood is absolutely colluding with larger funds. Now, it says, just like with Facebook, they've got these totally unilateral, one-sided terms of service that, in Facebook's case, say that they can kick you off. Well, in Robinhood's case, it says they can suspend trading basically at will. So even though the stock was going up, and the hedge funds were losing more and more and more, Robinhood came in and put a stop to that. And they do have that legal right, because sometimes as a trading platform, just like an old-fashioned investment house, they have to have certain minimum amounts to cover their positions, to cover their clients' positions, et cetera. So they do have that legal right. Is it slimy? Yes, it is slimy. And it just reminds me of Facebook in the sense that the terms of service, so-called, are really one-sided. And I would argue that you pay a pretty heavy price for free online trading.
Right. It just seems to me that you have when you have these folks, it's a chicken or egg kind of thing, because it's like you have all these folks that have so much power in the market because of state privilege, rigging the market with the Federal Reserve and all the different rules and regulations that protect the established players, where they can socialize their losses and privatize their profits, as you talk about a lot at the Mises Institute. But then when the little guys try to do something, no, stop the presses. There's a coordination of these oligarchic interests, even to the point where Discord gets in on the action and says, oh, yeah, we're banning, that's the chat room app, we're banning the Wall Street bets guys that were betting in these different markets. We're going to ban their chat because they said some extreme stuff and some racist stuff or something. So they use that as the cover, but they're really just banning it because they don't want to hurt the powerful that wouldn't even really have the power they have if not for the state and its intervention into the market.
Yes, and it really is none of their business to ban it. I mean, when we look at these social media platforms, when we look at cloud services like Amazon Web, these are akin to the fiber optic cables, the pipelines, which were being laid in the 90s, the 80s and 90s. And back then, there were a lot of advocates saying, you know what? In the new era, this is just like a utility. This is like electricity or a pipe with water to your neighborhood, or a pipe with gas to your neighborhood. And so fiber optic cable ought to be provided in a neutral fashion to people. I mean, you could make the same case for social media and for web services today, that this is basically the information pipeline, and it's almost like a public utility, and that everyone ought to be able to use it without the provider. I mean, the provider deserves to be paid, but if they're making basically editorial judgments and exercising their discretion over content, I mean, nobody says to the phone company back in the day or to the cellular network provider today, hey, these two criminals got together and they plotted a murder over your over your cellular network, and therefore you're going to be held as an accomplice, held liable criminally as an accomplice for this. No, of course we would never say that. We understand that what two people say on a cellular network is just, between them, and they're responsible for it. And the network itself is just providing the cell tower. Well, I think the same rules ought to apply here. I'm not arguing for a legal approach, but the same rules ought to apply here, and Discord should stay the hell out of it.
What is in your article you talked about GameStop's the saga unravels stakeholder theory. What is stakeholder theory? What is that?
Well, that's very much in vogue in the last let's say 20 or so years. This is the idea of social justice in the corporate setting. So the idea is that, well, when Nike sells a pair of shoes, it's not just between Nike and its customer or maybe Nike and its employees. We got to consider the broader picture. We got to consider the neighborhood where the Nike factory and store is. We've got to consider what happens overseas where their factory is. We have to consider what happens to some little domestic mom and pop shoemaker here, this and that. And more importantly, we have to consider whether really poor people can afford those, crazy $120 Nikes or whatever. And so basically the idea that companies have to consider the environment, they have to consider social justice, they have to consider charity, et cetera, as part of their mission, and not just this bottom line mentality about making money. Right. And in a sense, that's all well and good. If the owners of a company, public or private, want to do that, nobody faults a company for giving money to charity. But when the cause, the underlying cause, turns out to be not a left-wing cause, like for instance, giving money to Black Lives Matter, when the underlying cause is social justice against a favored hedge fund, like we saw with the GameStop incident last week, then all of a sudden it seems like the story is very different.
Right. We're talking to Jeff Deist, president of the Mises Institute. Their website is mises.org. I'm David Gronowski. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice. Back in just a moment after this short break. Hello, this is David Gronowski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a sixth-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR. Who is your neighbor? Dave and Wally are team drivers for Oakley Transport. One day, they came across a very serious accident on the highway. Some might pass on by, but Dave and Wally saw there was no time to waste. They jumped into action and saved two people's lives with moments to spare. That's the kind of courageous love we need more of today. It reflects the respected culture Oakley Transport develops with their driving professionals. CDLA licensed drivers. Join Oakley Transport today for a rewarding career. Visit oakleytransport.com. That's oakleytransport.com.
Do you despise lawyers? That may be the case until you need one. If you've been in an auto accident and need legal advice, go to the local attorneys that have served Tampa Bay families for over 28 years. Catania and Catania. They are family owned. They understand your legal situation. When you need legal representation, Catania and Catania will care for your case from the beginning to the end of representation. You won't need to worry. Catania and Catania will represent you through the entire process. Auto or motorcycle accidents are too frequent in Florida. Catania and Catania. They don't get paid if you don't get paid. Referrals on request. Contact Catania and Catania. Putting families first. Offices, Tampa. An attorney spokesperson.
Get the best coverage of the big game from a source you can trust. TampaBay.com. Powered by the Tampa Bay Times award-winning sports department, you'll get insights on the X's and O's, plus the latest updates from on and off the field. Subscribe now, and you'll receive an additional 20% off total access to TampaBay.com. From the greatest game of all time to the greatest quarterback of all time, choose the Tampa Bay Times. Go to TampaBay.com today.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gronowski here with Jeff Deist of Mises.org. He's the president of the Mises Institute. And I want to resume our conversation by coming a little closer to home here in Florida. This week, Ron DeSantis, our governor, announced that he's going after big tech with a lot of different proposals. And this is something that, Jeff, you and I have talked about for some time in the past. And we suggested that perhaps Florida could take the lead in challenging the big tech overreach that's been escalating ever so more. And, you know, there's complications with actual specifics of what's actually the right thing to do to take them on or not. But, you know, in the article at OrlandoWeekly.com, it talks about how, you know, basically DeSantis says they have so much garbage and filth on that platform all the time. They did not censor people when they are using those platforms or the rioting that occurred over the summer. He said DeSantis, one measure could be a $100,000 a day fine for each day a candidate is removed from a platform. Another would require technology companies' promotion of candidates to be recorded as campaign contributions with the state elections office, he said. Tech companies could also be prohibited from blocking or partially blocking posts by or about political candidates, a practice known as shadow banning. DeSantis would also like to see the Attorney General be able to bring actions against companies that advertise as an open forum and block users or fail to follow terms of service. What do you think of this, Jeff?
Yeah, it's really interesting that DeSantis is doing something at the state level because that's where the only action in town. The federal government, the new Congress, and the new Biden administration are absolutely bought and sold by tech companies. Their people are embedded in the Biden administration. Their campaign donations are huge. So we're not going to see anything happen to tech giants under Biden's watch and under this Congress's watch. So that's first and foremost. So DeSantis and a state like Florida is the only game in town. The question is what can be done or what should be done, and I don't know. I mean, I don't agree that Donald Trump or any other candidate should be kicked off social media platforms. I don't believe that companies, like, for instance, gun stores ought to be kicked off of payment gateways like Visa, or unbanked, have their accounts closed by banks like B of A. I don't agree with any of that. What I haven't figured out personally is what kind of law would help, right? I mean, you can always pass a law, David, and most of them have unintended consequences and result in problems we didn't think of ahead of time. That's why I'm a little hesitant about that. I mean, I would always rather see the lawsuit process between individual parties act as the regulator rather than a sweeping or broad law where sometimes it's like, using a nuclear bomb where a surgical strike is actually called for. So I don't agree with the current federal law that says, you've probably heard of it, this famous Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which basically says, these kinds of cases cannot be heard in state courts. Mm-hmm. So it's a law which employs federal preemption of state court hearings. And I don't think the federal government ought to be in the business of telling states, including Florida, what kind of cases they can entertain in their courts. So, I'm not a Floridian. I'm not going to tell DeSantis or the people of Florida whether they ought to be allowed to sue tech companies for deplatforming or sue banks or sue social media platforms, whatever it might be. But if the people of Florida decide they can, I'll tell you what, those tech companies have it coming. They have been exceedingly biased. They have been absolutely inconsistent in the way they've applied things. They've lied their asses off. They have promoted one side. They have advanced one voice, one type of voice, and pushed the other one down. And they're really a huge malevolent factor in society, I think, at this point. And if they get sued, I think they had it coming.
And I do think that there's a line that has been crossed when you see some of the dubious origins of some of these companies and the rules that they are able to bend for the market so that they get special privileges that other publishers don't. And all of it just reeks of a real nasty, Orwellian type situation that tries to pass these things off as just pure market realities when they're not. They're actively meddling in the affairs of countries. I mean, think about the folks in India who have their own internal issues, and here comes, social media campaigns with celebrities all trying to meddle and to steer outcomes. I mean, if you're a person in India who you're not going to concern yourself with, well, they're a private company. It's like, no, get the heck out of my country and stop destroying my life. If it's something that you think is doing, if the social media campaigns that the social media sites promote are actively harming your life, you have a right to self-defense, don't you, from these people?
I agree. And, it's just interesting that if David Gornowski says something on his radio show, he can be sued in a way that Facebook or Twitter could not be for saying the same thing on their platforms.
Right. Well, that's the nature of the state. They grant fiction and they grant false realities and then try to pass it off as legit. So, Jeff, it's always a pleasure to have you on the program, and I always look forward to your insights each week, especially what you're doing in Mises Institute to advance principled understanding of markets. I think it's something that's more timely than ever. So thanks for coming on the program.
All right. Thank you, David.
Very good. And that's it for today's episode of A Neighbor's Choice, folks. Remember, you can email me if you have a comment or guest suggestion or something you'd like to share. You can do so at hello@aneighborschoice.com. That's hello@aneighborschoice.com. And don't forget, you can go to our website. Like I always tell you, aneighborschoice.com is the place to go for all things related to our articles, our podcasts, our video episodes, our essays. We've got a whole bunch of content on there, a great archive. You can click on guests and see some of the notable guests that have come on, like Jeff Deist, and folks of various different fields of knowledge and expertise, all providing you with the tools you need to challenge the toxic groupthink that clouds our minds today. So remember, don't let fear take over your minds. Don't let fear take over your heart. You have to breathe in the fresh air of freedom together, realizing that we are in it together only when we treat our neighbors the way we want to be treated, only when we value individual liberty and personhood. No violence for nonviolent behavior. That's the axiom that we can always live for. So that's it for today. I'm David Gornowski. Godspeed.